Hi, greetings from Santa Clara University. I'm Father Kevin O'Brien, president of Santa Clara. I am delighted to invite you to our ongoing series on leadership in turbulent times. We all know it's been about a year since our lives have changed so dramatically. And though many of us have been sheltering in place for a year, we have not been standing still, particularly at Santa Clara. We continue to educate our students, our faculty continue to research, we continue to deepen our connections to Silicon Valley and well beyond, convinced that what the world will need when we come out of this pandemic, or as we are coming out of it, are leaders who are more nimble, more committed, more socially conscious, more creative, more compassionate. So it is very good that we take some time in the midst of this very unusual year to reflect on what leadership means. And I'm so delighted that we have the leadership of our interim dean and long-term faculty member in our Leavey School of Business, Naren Agrawal, who is our host for this series, and will introduce Niraj Shah, the CEO and co-founder of Wayfair. If we have learned anything over the course of this year, Naren, it's been how important e-commerce and online shopping and commerce is for us to stay healthy and connected and together this year. So a really wonderful leader, and I'm so happy to turn it over to you, Dean Agrawal.
Well, thank you very much, Father O'Brien, for this warm welcome to everyone in attendance today, and for your kind introduction. And thank you for your leadership during a time which has certainly been a very turbulent one for us here at the university. So thank you. And let me add my welcome to that by Father O'Brien to all of you who have joined us today. The audience includes our current students, faculty, staff, alumni, friends, and family members from across the country and beyond. So depending on wherever you are, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning. Welcome to another very exciting event in the Leavey School's Teens Leadership Speaker Series. As we emerge from what's been a year unlike any that we can remember from recent history, we're also learning about incredible leaders and communities and organizations that have risen up and are doing amazing things. So our goal in this series is to learn from the creativity and experiences of these successful leaders and organizations, and to celebrate these accomplishments. And so that's the reason why we launched this series on leadership in turbulent times. And today it is my great pleasure to introduce my guest, Mr. Niraj Shah, who's the CEO and co-founder of Wayfair. Let me just say a word or two about the company and about Niraj. For those who might not be aware, Wayfair is an online seller of furniture and home goods. The company was founded in 2002. At that time, it was called as CSN Stores. It was rebranded as we know it today in 2011. They had their IPO in 2014. Fast forward to now, last year, 2020, they had a phenomenal year with about $14 billion in revenues. They offer an incredible 20 million items to choose from, which are sourced from over 16,000 suppliers all over the world. They have a team of about 16,000 employees who serve almost 30 million active customers. So it's a phenomenal organization. And Niraj, he is a true serial entrepreneur. Prior to this venture, Niraj co-founded two other ventures, which hopefully we'll get to learn about shortly. He has a degree in engineering from Cornell and comes to us this afternoon from Boston, where he lives and where the company is headquartered. So Niraj, thank you so much for joining us today, and a very warm welcome from all of us in the Santa Clara community.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So Niraj, the plan is that you and I will have a kind of like a fireside chat for a few minutes, for about 30 minutes or so. And then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. We'll be joined by some students who are very excited to talk directly to you. And depending on how we're doing on time, we'll also try to get some questions from the audience. So for folks who are listening to us, please stay engaged with our conversation. Please enter your remarks, your questions, comments in the comment box. My colleagues are going to be monitoring that, and we'll try to take as many of those questions as we possibly can. So with that, Niraj, can we get started?
Great.
All right. So Niraj, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about Wayfair itself. Now, I have to say that I first learned about Wayfair probably 2 or 3 years ago when my son was looking for furniture for his apartment in New York. Being the caring dad that I am, I was on FaceTime with him, offering, or rather I should say, forcing my advice and experience with furniture buying on him. And he said, "Dad, Wayfair, I got this." Translation, back off, Dad, I know what to do. And so I did check out Wayfair, and I have to say that what I saw just blew me away. Clearly furniture buying is a complex activity. It's not like going to the store and buying a box of tissue. So my first question, for those who might not have experienced Wayfair yet, how would you describe what Wayfair does? And more importantly, how does Wayfair handle the complexity of furniture buying for consumers? How do you deliver consistently these amazing experiences to your customers?
No, absolutely. Well, we're an incredibly customer-focused company, so we always try to worry about what does a customer want and how can we best deliver that to them. And we look at it that way versus what are our competitors doing or what is normal in our industry, because we feel like it leads to more innovation if you just start from the customer and work backwards. We know customers want selection. We know they appreciate getting the items very quickly, and we know they want great service. And that's whether it's a question ahead of an order or whether something goes wrong. And you say, well, doing all that together is very difficult or whatnot. Well, our view is, well, that's what the customers want. You got to figure out how to do it. And so what we've really built over time is a platform where, as you mentioned, we have the 16,000 suppliers, and that number is an ever-growing number. And we provide them with tools and services so that they can basically do their best to put what they have built, the products they've designed, that the manufacturer that they've imported, in front of customers. And then we do a lot to help make sure the customers have an incredible experience. That's how do they navigate the catalog? We operate our own delivery operations. How do we make sure delivery is fast and convenient and easy? How do we do all this? And so the way we think about it is, well, having bespoke technology helps. So we have 3,000 people in the company building software. And then we're not afraid of what are the hard things, the physical operations. So we have 4,000 people in customer service. They're all in-house, full-time folks providing great service to employees. We have 16 million square feet of supply chain operations across 65 buildings, where we have very large warehouses. We have transportation operations. We have a freight forwarder that we built from scratch, where last year we moved just under 50,000 TEUs, which is a measure of ocean shipping containers, into the US on behalf of our suppliers. And we just kind of keep chipping away at making everything as optimally efficient and convenient as possible. And that sort of we're never done approach with the customer orientation really gets us there, because what that forces us to do is make sure we have the strongest team and the strongest culture to allow the team to do the most they can. And so kind of view it as a holistic approach that really gets us there.
That's great. Well, being a supply chain geek, that image of your supply chain is music to my ears. It's fantastic. It kind of sounds like, from a customer's point of view, when I go to your website, it looks like this beautiful swan floating on a lake, but there's a lot of activity happening behind the scenes, and your teams are really likely working very furiously to maintain that experience for your customers.
Yeah, I mean, just in order to do some of like in our particular category, imagery matters a lot. Now, you say images matter in every category, and that's true, but it's true to a degree. If we're selling AA batteries and Bounty paper towels, the image matters, but it matters to much less of a degree. And so one of the things we had to do was innovate around how can we, on a very cost-efficient basis, create 3D models and then very cost-effectively render whole suites of imagery from it in a way that's dramatically lower than the industry cost, allowing us to have a lot more imagery and be much more dynamic in changing it all because customers value the imagery. It's a big piece of understanding the product story. And in home, which is the only category we focus on, it's a huge competitive advantage. So there's just approaches like that we've taken. A lot of them are rooted in technology. Some of them are in the physical logistics. You mentioned supply chain, just around, these are big and bulky items prone to damage. They're just things we do differently in our supply chain. But we sort of are willing to tackle those problems because we view it as not just helping the customer with something that they want, but it gives us then obviously a competitive advantage. It helps build the flywheel that keeps our business succeeding.
Absolutely. So you're not just an e-commerce company to provide furniture, but it seems like you're also a company with a lot of supply chain excellence expertise and technology expertise. All of that has to come together to ultimately deliver that experience to the consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, I know you know Jim Miller well, our CTO, and Jim. Jim's basically been a career operations executive in fast-growing technology companies, and that he's brought a lot to us. But we have a whole team of folks that are really impressive, that have been huge pieces of what's allowed us to succeed.
Absolutely. Jim is fantastic. So I know that when you started as CSN Stores, and now you're Wayfair. So for someone who's not familiar with this, is Wayfair a brand or a platform for brands? Is that something that has evolved over time? How do I think about Wayfair?
Yeah. So what I would say is we've certainly worked hard to make Wayfair a household name, a brand that customers can come to know for all things home, and with a confidence that we're going to provide great service, great value, stand behind everything so that they don't need to worry and they can have the confidence. But I would say our operating model for our brand Wayfair is not that of a traditional retailer. It's more that of a platform. So we're trying to connect all of these suppliers to all of these customers, but in a way that doesn't have the customer having to worry about who is this supplier, what is the shipping experience going to be like, what is the return policy. We handle all of that in the consistent way a retailer would, but we harness the energy of 16,000 suppliers by acting as a platform rather than a traditional retailer. And so that mix of the two models, we think, is a big piece of what's allowed us to succeed and do what we've done.
That's great. Let me switch gears and talk a little bit about your journey, Niraj, because one of the things we want to do in this series is also learn about folks like you who've had a lot of amazing experiences to share. So you started your educational career by getting your degree in engineering at Cornell, and then I understand that you were actually headed to law school. You gave that up, and fast forward a few years, you're now the CEO and co-founder of Wayfair. Us being a business school right here in the heart of the Silicon Valley, we talk a lot about risk, taking risk, measuring risk, good risk, bad risk. Did you consider that move as a risky move right after your undergrad versus going after a stable job with a well-known company? And how did you decide that was the right risk for you to take?
Yeah, so I did not view, so when I was graduating from Cornell with my bachelor's degree in engineering, I'd gotten into a one-year master's program at MIT in engineering. So I was going to go to MIT, and I'd gotten into Georgetown Law School, and I deferred that for the year. And in the end, I never did end up attending either of those two programs because we started our first company together, Steve and I did, right out of college. And over the course of that summer, it started to show some promise, decided to pursue it. And to be honest, I didn't view that as particularly risky. And the reason I didn't view it as risky is, and I always encourage folks, when you're young, it's the least risky time to try something, because as long as you can afford to, pay the bills, and when your costs to live when you're young very low, what's gonna happen? You're gonna gain experience, and so even if what you do doesn't work, you'll probably learn more by pursuing it than you will by whatever else you would have done. And of course, you're only doing it because you think it could work. And so, of course, I wouldn't discount the chance that it could work. There's probably a real chance that it could work. And when I think about something like graduate school or law school, those would clearly be valuable. But in my mind, I had something I was very excited about that I thought could work, and it seemed really compelling to pursue. If it didn't work, the truth is graduate school and law schools will still be there. While there's no guarantee that they would take me again, the reality is there's a good chance I could apply and go to school again. So I viewed it as, well, what's the risk of giving this, a summer? There was no risk giving it a summer. Then what's the risk of giving it a year? There's no real risk to giving it a year. And I wasn't committing to give it 20 years. I was committing to give it a period of time to see what happened. And so I think some folks sometimes misconstrue the element of risk because there's a scary outcome, but it's only a certain percentage. But because it's so scary, the percentage gets exaggerated in their mind. And I think that's an important thing to take a step back from and really look at and just say, really, if I believe in this and it makes sense, what really is the risk and how large is the risk? And here, where you reframe it as, well, you could always go back to school and the learnings you'll probably get would be substantial. Then all of a sudden the risk seems to disappear.
It's a good point. And it's not like you didn't have any great fallback options. So having the confidence of that probably helped you plunge into this quote unquote risky venture with that much more comfort. So that's great. Niraj, you mentioned Steve, your colleague and co-founder. When I was doing my research, getting ready for our conversation, I came across several pictures and videos of you and Steve Conine. This is one of those, and this is one of many that I saw. And the thing that struck me was that in all these pictures and the videos that I saw, the two of you seemed to enjoy a phenomenal relationship. Can you talk a little bit about how the two of you became partners? I mean, obviously that would be relevant to people in our audience who want to become entrepreneurs.
Well, for us, our relationship started as friends. So we had met at a summer program at Cornell before we actually started as undergraduate students. We then coincidentally ended up 3 doors apart on our freshman year floor. So we ended up in the same group of friends. That group of friends, we ended up being roommates for 2 years while we were at Cornell. And so we were good friends. That we were both quite entrepreneurially inclined, which led us to take an entrepreneurship course at the very end of our time at Cornell, which was an elective course that was offered broadly to undergraduate students. That led to starting the first business. So our root was really as friends. And a lot of business partnerships don't always work when friends go into business together. In our case, it did. We trusted each other's judgment. We found that our skills, while they had overlap, our interest areas of where we gravitated to in the business ended up being highly complementary, where I gravitated more to the general management type work and Steve gravitated more to the technology work. And, obviously our careers had a lot of twists and turns. We started 3 companies together. The first one was successful. The second one, to a modest degree, the second one was unsuccessful. We shut it down. We sold it for pittance after, not very long, a little over a year. And then this is the third one. And this one we started in 2002. So we've now been at it 19 years, but last year we did $14 billion. We're in the Fortune 250, climbing fast, and we think we're still getting started. So it's been a great success. But the point is we've just enjoyed everything we've done. As we've had twists and turns, it's worked out very well. And I've always felt like it's really nice to have a partner in business because other aspects of it can be quite solitary. And so it's kind of nice to have someone in the journey with you.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a wonderful long relationship, longer than many marriages last. So congratulations on that relationship. So what would you characterize as the secret behind your lasting relationship with Steve? Did you guys always know that you wanted to be the CEO and he wanted to do what he's doing? Or is that also something that evolved over time?
I would say it's something that evolved, but it evolved fairly quickly. I mean, I would say we were kind of figuring out, well, who's supposed to do what? But within the first few months of our first business, it sort of evolved to these roles. And it felt quite natural, the evolution. So then we stuck with it and it's worked very well. So I'd say that was the luck part. The luck part was that what we gravitated to ended up being highly complementary. Because obviously if we both gravitated to the interest being in the same area and not in the other area, it gets much tougher because obviously you need to work as a team to cover off all the bases. And I think people do their best when they're working on things they're particularly interested to and inclined for.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there were lots of instances where there were disagreements between the two of you about business decisions or other decisions. How did you, what did you have to fall back on to come at those decisions, from different points of view, but ultimately find a resolution that was in the company's best interest?
I mean, there's always going to be some disagreements. I would say in the beginning, when we were first working together, it probably took a little longer to figure out the balance. But say over time, you get to know each other well. You also learn to trust each other's judgment more. You also know on which topics, which one of you perhaps has more insight to. And so that really helps. And so I'd say, it was we fell into a rhythm a long time ago now. So I'd say we probably fell into a rhythm during our first company, which, we started that in 1995. We sold it 4 years later. And then we worked for the company we sold it to for a couple of years. I'd say by the time we even sold that 4 years in, that we had really fallen into that rhythm. So that was even before this company started in 2002.
Oh, that's great. Now, just related to that, here in the Silicon Valley, we have tons of really amazing companies founded by incredible founders, but it's not always the case that founders make for the most effective CEOs. Certainly not so in your case. So what would you attribute that to? I mean, how come you've enjoyed doing this role for so long and been effective at it?
Yeah, well, I think that ends up being different for every individual. I think for me, as the company has grown, what I need to do in my role continues to evolve. And so I think the biggest thing is if someone keeps doing things the same way they were doing it yesterday, it doesn't matter whether you're the CEO or you're just running a group or you're running a team inside that type of company, it's typically the approach you're taking will not continue to work, because as you get bigger, things need to evolve and need to change. I personally found that very interesting. And so that's been something that even instinctually, I was sort of, inclined to view it that way. And I think that's continued to allow me to sort of evolve at a rate that's allowed me to remain successful, not just as the founder with a vision, but as a CEO running the business. To be honest, I think there's also folks who could perhaps have done it, but they maybe don't find it interesting. So in my case, I've been successful enough to be able to do it. And some of that I'm sure is luck, but I've also found it interesting, enjoyed it. And I think, no matter what your job is, those are sort of the two things. You need to have the skills to succeed and be willing to work hard at it. But you also need to make sure you're enjoying it, because it's very hard to give everything, give it your all every day if you don't enjoy what you're doing.
I think that's a good point, but it's impressive that you bring to this role, both the skills and the vision and strategy setting, but also a fair amount of focus on execution, which I suspect is a big part of for what you have to do, and that's an impressive combination. So that's wonderful. So Niraj, you take that step after your undergrad. Obviously, it's worked out really well for you and the company. What we also know is that for any organization, any leader to succeed in the long run, that success has to be bolstered by a strong set of personal values and a clear leadership style. What are the key values, your personal values or your company's values, that have helped you through this journey?
Well, we believe a lot that from a business standpoint, we're obviously very focused on making sure our customers are succeeding. Well, how will we do that? Well, we need to have the best team, and we need to have the best culture to support the best team. And so that's not just about caliber of folks, but it's also about ways in which folks can really work together and be collaborative, the ways in which we exist in our broad community. So whether that's the local communities that we're in, or whether that be our suppliers. And so we sort of take a very holistic view of our role. And I think as a result, we create a place that people want to be, talented people want to be and enjoy being. That then allows us to work at these challenging problems and create solutions that we're very excited about. Customers ultimately, if we create the right solutions, reward us because they're excited and they come back. And we feel like it creates a very virtuous cycle. And so we view it as we want to be a partner to all the different constituents in our broad ecosystem versus viewing it as any sort of competition or zero-sum game.
I see. So it's taking that holistic view, not just for employees within the company, but also in your extended enterprise, your suppliers, and on the customer side as well.
Very much so.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the company and about your journey. Let me switch gears a little bit and talk about this past year that's just behind us. So the pandemic hits, we get to know about it, January, February, somewhere around there. And while many companies in many industries have suffered, that's not been the case for Wayfair. I mean, your revenues have grown, your stock price has nearly tripled over this past year, which is wonderful. We can understand that some of it is because people are buying more stuff as they're getting more comfortable to the idea of e-commerce. But particularly for your business, and as you described earlier, dealing with this quick scaling has to be extremely non-trivial. It's a very complex enterprise to grow. So how did that happen? Did you just get lucky and had all your expansion plans in place already, or were you able to read the early signs and respond to it quickly? So in other words, what is it that allowed you to scale so quickly this past year, when for a lot of other companies, even in good times, this kind of scaling is hard?
Yeah, I think really good credit goes to our team. So there's a couple of things. So one is, while we grew very quickly this past year, and the initial spike for COVID was a tremendous spike that was unanticipated. The truth is, if you just even look at the period before that, we went public in 2014. Yeah. That year, we did a little over $1 billion in direct retail revenue. And if you fast forward to 2019, pre-COVID, we did over $9 billion. Our compound annual growth rate over that period, the 6 years, was just under 50% per year. And so the rate of growth that we would consider normal was already what's generally would be viewed as quite a high rate of growth, particularly at the scale we were at. Now, handling a spike is still very difficult from whatever you're tuned to. This is where our team, I think, did an incredible job, because it wasn't just a spike in volume, but it was also, we had a multi-thousand person customer service organization go to working from home overnight. We had corporate team of 6,000, 7,000 people moved to working from home overnight. And then we had 7,000, 8,000 people in the 65 logistics operations who were essential workers, keeping it running. It's still going to work, and we had to implement social distancing procedures, new shift schedules, new cleaning protocols, a lot of different things. And then the teams did an incredible job figuring it out in real time, to where we never had any sort of shutdown. We were able to continue servicing our customers and communities. In fact, we did a lot to help. We helped set up field hospitals in New Orleans, in Boston, in New York, in the UK, with beds and mattresses and the like. And so we did a lot for our community as well as for our customers. And it's very it's very easy to be proud of the team, but I think, to answer your question in terms of why we were able to do it, it's because of the team.
Because of the team, and I guess by this point you're already used to the idea of scaling, every year. So I guess that was probably already a part of your DNA, which probably helped when this spike presented itself. You mentioned something which is interesting. Obviously, people in the education business, we had the luxury of being able to work from home. It was hard for us and our students, but at least we were able to do it. And as you said, some of your employees are easily able to work from home, but folks in your distribution centers or in the delivery part of your business could not. Were there any special things that you had to do to take care of those employees?
Yeah, so I mentioned a moment ago some of the things we had to do on the health and safety side to make sure we were operating in a manner that was very safe. We did some other things to help these folks, because they're going through challenging times. So, for example, one I think somewhat novel concept we did is we created a program called Dinners to Go. And what we did for Dinners to Go is we contracted with local independent restaurants right near our locations, places that our employees had enjoyed eating at, who were under significant duress because restaurants, as you know, were kind of forced to close, and they weren't able to stay open, so they could only do delivery and takeout. And in a lot of these communities, that just wasn't very much volume relative to what they needed to stay in business. And we contracted with these folks, and what we did is, for all of our associates, we basically set up so they could get a free family meal for their whole family twice a week to take home for dinner. And they could pick from the whole host of local restaurants, which were all independent, 100 different family-owned restaurants we contracted with across all our different locations. And in the end, we ended up providing more than 100,000 free meals to our team members. for their families at a time that was very stressful for everybody. And in the process, helped a lot of the local restaurants, some of whom specifically thanked us and wrote notes thanking us, saying that without that volume, they thought they would have gone out of business.
That's a great example of how you were truly a citizen of your community, and so you're doing something that helps the community and it helps your employees and their families. And I think that's a wonderful message, because these values are very consistent with the values that we have here at Santa Clara University. So thank you for sharing that. The other big lesson that all of us in this country have also become aware of this past year had to do with our painful history and ongoing prevalence of racism and inequity. It's something that at our university, our president and our trustees have committed us to becoming an anti-racist institution. It's going to be a long road ahead for us, but we are on it and committed to it. Would you mind talking about any programs that you may have undertaken at Wayfair to address these kind of issues?
Yeah, so we're pretty proud of the fact that we've been working at this for a while. So 2 years ago, we formally launched a DEI initiative. A year ago, we hired our head of DEI, and within the last 12 months, we not only built up that team, but we built up a DEI analytics function and some other functions that we think are going to allow us to really make a measurable headway past just awareness. Some examples, we created a certified interviewer program, and that for people in the company who are going to interview candidates, it includes unconscious bias training. And we found that the unconscious bias training has been quite valuable because while folks could have conscious bias, that's not really the biggest problem we're combating. We're finding that we're trying to get great folks who don't have conscious bias, but it doesn't mean that they don't have unconscious bias because they've grown up in the world where there is different things you learn from just the world around you, and some of it may not be what you want to have in the future. Another example is for written performance reviews. What we now do is we do using algorithms. We do sentiment analysis, text analysis. So we do this on over 10,000 written performance reviews. We just did the latest batch recently. And we look for patterns that we can identify where language can be used in a biased way, particularly against underrepresented groups. And we use that to then conduct trainings and coachings. And that's really been very helpful, because what we found is that the solutions, you said it yourself when you referred to the road to being an anti-racist institution. You said, well, that'll be a really challenging road, or it's a long way to go. I don't remember the exact words you used, but something to that effect. And I think that the reason that's the case is that you're not really combating something that's overt and easy to spell. It's actually a lot of it is subconscious and is embedded, and that's what we believe. And so that's why we've taken these approaches, which are more complex, but we think they actually drive change. We've also done a bunch of things around community, both Change Starts at Home, which is something we've organized inside the company, and it's different virtual forums and sessions. There's really a lot of educational content, built up a lot of awareness. But then we've also partnered with a lot of institutions that exist in the communities we're in. There's Apprenti in Boston While Black, Europe, Resilient Coders. These help us access talent that's very diverse, as well as letting us participate in building up those organizations.
That's fantastic, and I really was very intrigued by the notion that you're using data and analytics to understand the incidences and practices that lead to these behaviors. And I'm looking forward to kind of learning more from that as you implement it and as you're able to share more. I think that would be an amazing set of insights for many other organizations, and certainly for folks like us at universities as well. That's great. Niraj, I'm looking at our time here, so I think what I'd like to do at this point is get to the part of the evening where I know you're also looking forward to, which is talking directly to our students and others in the audience. So I'm going to invite some of our students to join us. These are some of our amazing students who are from the business school, but they are also a part of our retail studies minor, which is offered through an institute we have called the Retail Management Institute. It's a wonderful program that we are very proud of. And Jim Miller, who you mentioned, we're very proud that he serves on our advisory board. He's been a wonderful colleague. So I'd like to invite these students. They want to talk directly to you about some questions they have. And then after that, hopefully, as time permits, we can draw upon some questions from the audience as well.
Great.
So these students are here. So let me first turn to Jamie. Jamie is a senior in the business school. She is a psych major and also a part of our retail studies minor. Jamie, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. So my question has to do with customer service. And as you know, this is a very important aspect of the buying experience. And so I was just wondering if Wayfair requires its customer service representatives to go through any sort of training. And if so, if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so Janie, absolutely. So we have I think we have 4,600 people in customer service, and they're all full-time employees of the company with benefits. So we invest very heavily into having folks who not only feel like they're part of the company, but we want to make sure that we're providing compensation, other benefits that let us attract really talented folks. So as you would surmise, obviously, then we're going to absolutely provide them with training. We want to help them be as successful as possible because we're focusing on getting great talent to then take care of customers in a great way. And so we provide continuous training. So there's obviously training when you're first getting started at Wayfair, understanding our systems and getting trained on how everything works. But then what we do is we have continuous training to basically keep helping all our agents keep improving their skills and get more and more specialized in different areas so that they can provide better and better experience to customers. And so some of that's technical training and for certain product categories, whether it's lighting or plumbing or flooring and tile, or some that might be around how to size furniture. And so there's different trainings like that, as well as other trainings around, basically we strive to have really high customer satisfaction rates. So different trainings on how to help customers with different types of situations or how to understand what customers' needs are. And so it's very embedded into how we operate to focus on coaching and training our agents to provide them with what they need in order to do a great job and then reward them for that. And that's how we operate.
Thank you so much.
I think it's impressive that a little over a quarter of your employees are your customer service representatives, which is phenomenal. I mean, it speaks to your emphasis on the need for customer satisfaction.
Well, and we only focus on home, and so this is a complicated category. So I think again, if you think back, if you're selling paper towels and dish soap, it's a different type of category. And I think we think home is special. Customers love home, but it has a lot of challenges and a lot of questions. And so there's a lot of interaction with customers, but we think that's valuable.
Absolutely. Thank you, Janie. Let me next invite Eugene Choi. He is also a senior. Eugene is a marketing major, also studying the retail studies minor. Eugene, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. And hi, Niraj. Big fan of what you and Wayfair have achieved thus far, and you've really rocked the industry. And thank you for sharing your journey. And one question that I was curious about was last July, Wayfair went viral on social media, especially in my generation, with conspiracy theories and different claims about the company. How much of that actually impacted the business? And did you learn anything from that turbulent time?
Yeah. So, what I would say is, I think the thing that we've known, but that's certainly hammered home, was that unfortunately, as a major consumer brand, we're going to need to be prepared for attacks, including those that could be rooted in no fact or substance whatsoever. I think as growing up, you would expect that you could be rooted in attacks based on substance, but the notion that you could be rooted, in attacks that are just totally manufactured is not something that I would have expected as reasonable years ago. But what you realize is as you get bigger as a brand, regardless of whether that's fair or not, that happens. And so in this case, it was a totally baseless conspiracy theory. And what we learned was, how to react, how to make sure that the truth gets out there. You need to react with some speed, and making sure that the honest truth is out there. Because in today's world, you can have messages get out there, and if they get repeated enough, and there's no facts that follow it, folks could start to believe that things are true. Here, it was obviously kind of on a surface it seemed false, and so I think maybe perhaps that was helpful. But the truth is, we a number of major news publications debunked it, and that was really the right thing, and that happened, and so that happened fairly quickly. I don't think we suffered any significant harm from it, but it's not the type of experience you'd like to go through, and what you realize is that it'll probably happen at some point again in the future, despite the fact that you don't want it to. And so you just learn that there's things that you need to be prepared for in today's day and age.
Thank you so much.
That's interesting. So with all the benefits of social media, there are also a lot of caveats that organizations and individuals need to be aware of and be able to respond quickly, but very intentionally as well.
I think very, very much so. And I think that's where having a brand that has long-term trust in it helps significantly too. And I think that's where it's sometimes the things you do today and the actions and the reputation you build is helpful later. You don't always know necessarily what the reputation is helpful for, but having a great reputation is helpful.
Sure, that's great. Thank you. Thanks, Eugene. I'm going to next invite our third student here, Adele O'Neill. Adele is also a senior. She is an economics major and is also in the retail studies minor. So Adele, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Hi, Niraj. Thank you for being here. Wayfair has undoubtedly always been a retail company that I've liked to learn from a lot as a retail student, so it's been great to hear your perspective. So in any case, I know with COVID, things have been changing a lot in the retail industry. And so I was wondering, how do you expect the omni-channel retail experience for high involvement shopping like home and furniture to change as the pandemic eases up? And do you expect to further integrate with more brick and mortar stores than just the current single one you have? Or will you really purely lean into e-commerce, social, and mobile?
Yeah, no, so we think the more ways we can engage with customers, the better. So going way back in time, we just did online advertising, brought them into the website, and we could talk to them on the phone. Over time, we now mail catalogs and flyers. We have television advertising. We have chat in addition to email. And so the more rich interactions we can create and varied ones, the more we believe that's valuable. We had a brick and mortar store we tested in a mall outside of Boston, the Natick Mall. It was a pretty small format store, and it was quite successful. What we learned from it, though, is from a size of store standpoint, we realized we really need a larger format store and really to bring the brand to life, given all the different categories that we're in and the breadth of selection that we have. So we're now working on a new format that we'll try, and we feel like we're still learning what the optimal formats are for our different brands that'll work. But we think brick and mortar stores are additive to the online experience. And the big benefit we have is we have this integrated supply chain that basically already exists with the delivery capabilities that could support them both. And so we feel like it's really all about figuring out the right model of a store that'll really bring our brand to life. And we sort of know that the monetization will work. We've already been able to prove that. And so we're excited about where this journey will take us. Like everything we do, we sort of test and learn, and then as we figure out something, we'll then scale it. And I think the last thing I'd just point out is, our category, we only focus on home. And so what's interesting about that is it's a category that very few folks focus on. There's like functional stores, like there's a lighting showroom or a plumbing showroom or a furniture store that obviously focus on that category. And then there's large retailers who have a section for home, whether that's a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Walmart or a Target. But the idea that everything you do is home in a very immersive way, we think it fits the customer's interest, but it's not really kind of the current focus of any large retail brand.
Great, thank you.
How many stores do you have right now, Niraj?
We had the one store in Natick in the mall, and we have one outlet store that's part of how we handle returns. And so we're kind of still in the trialing formats stage.
I see. So we're not ruling out having more stores in the future as you learn from your experiences.
Yep.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Eugene, Adele, and Janie for joining us. I'm looking at our comments here, and I'm going to try to pick some questions from the audience. Let's see. We have to have one question about this. So here's a question from the audience, and the question is, what is the home furnishings competitive environment like, especially with Amazon aggressively moving into that market?
Yeah, so what I would say is there's quite a few competitors in home. So there's quite a few different participants. And as I mentioned, whether it's the Home Depot and Lowe's and Walmart's and Targets or Amazon or specialty folks, Bed Bath & Beyond or a Macy's or local independents, whether it's a furniture chain or lighting showrooms, a lot of which are local, we compete with all of these folks. I think, again, the big opportunity is in terms of a scale player who's focused on home, who has the capabilities we do around fast delivery and breadth of selection and high quality merchandising, we think we really stand out. And our whole focus is to stay focused on home and to keep building more and more of a bespoke experience. We think that we're well suited to do that. And we think that that's pretty novel. So we think if we can keep doing a good job of that, we're going to keep seeing the success we've been seeing.
That's great. Thank you. Another question that I see here is has to do with when one goes to your website. One of the things that's very striking is the aesthetics of your collections that are presented. They look gorgeous, but based on what you've described before, it also seems like there will be a huge amount of data and analytics that lies behind every decision that gets made about what gets presented and where does it get presented and how do you store stock inventory and where do you stock it and so on and so forth. So it seems like your business has these two types of skills that are needed to be successful for your employees. This sense of aesthetics and this hard kind of analytics side of decision making. So what does that say about the kind of students that should be trained at universities and business schools like us?
Yeah, so we sort of believe that there's a whole variety of skills and roles in the company. What I would say is we try to use data and analytics in everything we do. So, for example, even when you get at some of the aesthetics, some of the curation is done by algorithms, where we've been able to figure out different ways to introduce the concept of style and the concept of style adjacencies into things like sort orders and collections. And then we, of course, have pieces where humans are doing it, and humans can add value in ways algorithms can't, in really styles and trends in the future. And we really try to couple the two. And so we don't view them as fully distinct. We view them as both valuable, and we try to find ways to combine them, to be honest.
I see. That's great. Here's another question. What have been some of the biggest company adjustments that you've had to make during this COVID year? And have any of these changes proven to have staying power in the long run?
Yeah, so what I will say is, we've certainly that we've had to be very adaptable, as you could guess. I would say generally folks are pretty excited who are working from home to be back in the office. But we think, for example, work from home, like there might be a blend of work from home and work in the office. We're going to have to figure that out. We've also found that certain types of meetings, like we do business reviews twice a year. And what we found is doing those, we use the Google Suite, doing those over Google Meet where, everyone's a little tile and you can have quite a few additional people listening in. It's a very productive way relative to the old format, which is we'd have a whole bunch of people around a conference room in Boston, a whole bunch of people around a conference room in Berlin, and you'd be on video. But like if someone on the other line was talking, you couldn't really see who it was. And doing it over video is very productive. So we actually decided that format, we're going to keep doing that way over Google Meet in the future, even when we're back in the office. And so there's been some forced innovation that's worked out to be incredibly successful. So I think what the real test here over the next stretch of time as we get back to normal, which I think we see is a little over the horizon here, not too far away, is to figure out how to integrate sort of the learnings from this period into what we create while getting back some of the things we've missed because we've not had them in the last year.
That's great. Here's another one. This has to do with the structure of your supply chain. What does your supply chain look like? Do you own it yourself, or is it all third party that ships your products ultimately to the end customer?
Yeah, so we operate a dozen or so large warehouses. The warehouses are roughly 1,000,000 square feet each. So I think, it's 17 football fields of space that get racked up 30 or 40 feet. So relatively large buildings. And, but what we operate them as a 3PL. So ultimately we don't own inventory. Our suppliers own the inventory. They can ship it out of their locations, or they can forward position it in ours. When they forward position it in ours, because in our buildings, we integrate them with our transportation and do a lot of sortation, we can badge those items for incredibly fast delivery, which helps them sell more volume. We then, we inject into parcel carriers for the smaller items. That's a UPS, a FedEx. We do a lot with FedEx, for example. But we also, when you get to bigger items, bulkier items, and you're talking about 2 people bringing an item into your house, we operate a lot of those transportation operations ourselves. And so we have 40 home delivery terminals in the US delivering about 70% of those deliveries. And in Canada, we deliver about 40% of those. In the UK, we're at about 20% of those. So we're increasingly doing our own deliveries for the larger items. And so it's an integrated supply chain where we do have third-party carriers like the UPS or FedEx's. We have third-party ocean carriers like Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd. But then we have our own operations, whether it's consolidation operations in Asia, or whether it's our warehouses or our transportation operations or our cross docks. And so it's a blend, but we operate and manage it ourselves.
I see. So these bulky items that you were talking about, you have your own trucking assets, for example, and employees who are Wayfair employees who do that, or you partner with someone to handle that?
So for example, for New York City, we have a large building in Linden, New Jersey. In Linden, New Jersey, we rent the building. All the employees in the building are Wayfair full-time employees, and then we have a different dedicated trucking capacity from third-party trucking companies who are then operating these Wayfair trucks. So we might be running out of Linden. We're probably running 80 trucks a day in and around Manhattan and northern New Jersey doing home deliveries.
I see. That's a combination. Great. Okay, here's another question. What are some major mistakes that you have learned from over your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think the single biggest thing I think you learn is it's a real challenge when you're in a fast-growing business where you're managing a team of people, and not everyone's going to continue to scale with the business. But when you focus a lot on the culture, you're generally going to have a great team of people. And so you could have someone who's been incredibly successful, who's a great person, and they're now struggling. And the thing we've always learned is you just need to deliver feedback to folks quickly, because that helps them be successful. And if someone's not able to be successful, it allows you to figure out what role could they be successful in, or figure out a solution. And I think that's the hardest thing we see new managers struggle with. It's never an enjoyable piece of the business for me or anyone else, but it's a critical thing to do. And I would say that never gets any easier. So that's the number one thing I point out to folks.
Great. Niraj, so far, we've talked about the company, your journey, your values, what we've learned from the last year. If we turn around and kind of look ahead for the coming months and years, what kind of trends with respect to technology or business models or consumer preferences that exist that you are most excited about, or that you're most concerned about?
Well, there's a bunch that I'm excited about. So one area we've been spending a lot of time on is augmented reality. I think augmented reality is going to, I think you're going to get to a point where you're going to buy any home item, you're going to already have seen it where it's going to be, and you're going to have an exact photorealistic feel for what your room would be like with this item. So I think that's an example of one. Another one is we have screens in the office where you run your hand over the screen and you can feel the fabric. And then these haptic displays, it's just a number of years before they'll be built into your cell phone. And so there's just changes that are going to happen that seem crazy, but they're already operational today. Now it's operational on a screen that costs thousands of dollars and uses a huge amount of power. So that's not, but that will change. And so I think technology's got a very, very bright runway. I think the biggest challenge with technology is just a question of what are all the jobs of the future as relating to the jobs of the past, and how do we make sure that the jobs match the workforce, and that we continue to do the things we need to do, whether it's training or retraining or education, just to help enable folks to continue to be more and more successful in a world that does take advantage of more and more technology, which do offer benefits. And I think just the more proactive and ahead of the curve we are there, the better. And I think it's something that we all should care a lot about.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing. The haptic technology, I can't wait for that to become real. Sounds very exciting. We're coming towards the end of the hour here, so I just have a couple of other questions that I want to ask you. I do want to thank all the audience for their questions. So here's the first of the two. I understand that you have two kids, one of whom is probably in high school now. Probably thinking about college or soon. By the way, if they're looking to get as far away from mom and dad as possible, I would encourage them to consider being a Bronco at Santa Clara University. But with the benefit of the hindsight that you have over the years, what advice would you give your kids, assuming they want to listen to you, about how best to prepare themselves for the years ahead of them as they enter college, or as they think about the years beyond college?
Yeah, so what I would encourage them to do, I think at the end of the day, you have to pursue something you're interested in. So I don't necessarily believe it makes sense to tell them what they should go study or what they should pursue. Mm-hmm. I think you need to pursue something you find interesting, that you're really excited to invest time into and work hard at. I think there's a real value in being curious. Mm-hmm. And so I encourage them to be curious. And then the last thing, you kind of asked this early on, but I do think people overestimate risks. And so if there's things they want to try, obviously not reckless things, but if there are things they want to try which make sense, and whether that's living in a foreign country or being entrepreneurial and starting something, those are great things to take seriously, but do. And I think I try to, my wife and I both try to be encouraging on that, because that then helps a younger kid just sort of maybe have the confidence to do something that they want to do, but maybe they could have been talked out of it if you took the different tack.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. All right. Well, I want to, as we come to the close, I want to end on a lighter note, and I want to do that by throwing a series of rapid fire questions at you.
Okay.
And the goal is for us in the audience to get a peek into Niraj Shah, the person. So just think about the first answer that pops into your head.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. What's the last movie or streaming show that you have seen?
Yeah, we just watched Trial of the Chicago 7.
Ah, yeah, it's wonderful. Yes, thank you. What's the last book that you read?
So I've been reading a series. It's a espionage thriller series called by the Gabriel Allon series by Daniel Silva. And so I started with a more recent books, and then I've gone back and been reading the earlier ones. It's a fantastic series, and during the pandemic, because I'm not traveling, I've had more time to read than normal, so it's been fun.
Oh, that's great. I have to check that out. I have not seen that. That's great. Okay, what's your favorite vacation destination to travel to?
Okay, so we have a second home on Cape Cod, and that would absolutely be the answer.
Nice. That is very nice. So some of these questions were compiled by my colleagues. So what's the first website that you check out each morning after you check your inbox?
Yeah, it's usually the New York Times.
Okay. Great. Speaking of inboxes, how many emails do you have in your inbox?
Be very, I tend to read emails very quickly, and in any given time, I probably only have 50, 60 emails in my inbox, virtually all read.
Wow. Okay. So you're not like me. I have thousands, because that's my repository of all past information.
Yeah, so it's kind of like my working inbox, and once I'm done with it, I file it in an archive. So I have it there, but it's not. Those are active emails in my inbox.
That's great. When's the next big Wayfair sale?
Well, every spring, usually in April, we have one called Way Day. And last year we had to move it out of April due to the pandemic, but I think this year I look forward in the spring.
Right. So folks in the audience, keep your eye out. What do you do for fun when you're not working?
Well, spend time with my family. We enjoy downhill skiing. We enjoy playing racket sports. We enjoy traveling, obviously not so much in the last year.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And here's the last one, Niraj. This is a very important question that I ask all our guests. Batman versus Superman versus Spider-Man. Who would you root for?
Well, I think you'd want to root for all of them. But I'd probably, if I was picking one of them, maybe I would pick Batman.
And why?
Well, I think Batman is just such a great story, and you have a guy, really, youth full of privilege, but also terrible trauma, and you just you have him, fighting for good in a really complex situation, and I don't know, it's a great story. I mean, all three are though.
Certainly a very romantic story behind it. So fantastic. Well, thank you. So on that note, Niraj, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your insights about Wayfair, about your journey, your leadership, and also some wonderful advice to our young students and others who are listening to you. I certainly look forward to another phenomenal year at Wayfair and wish you well as you continue to succeed as a leader and as an entrepreneur. I hope we can get to welcome you in person one of these times when it's possible for you to travel. It'd be wonderful to have you engage directly with our community when you're able to. And I know that our community that's listening to you today joins me in extending a very warm thank you to you. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining us for another wonderful episode of the Leavey School's Dean's Leadership Speaker Series. Please look out for information about our next event, which we hope to share with you shortly. We post recordings of all of our events on our website. So our previous event, as well as today's event, you'll be able to find that recording there shortly. So I hope you'll check it out, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So with that, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Stay healthy and go Broncos.